This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenawalt, Senior Fellow, the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mara Donnelly. Mara, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, what's new in Pennsylvania state government? Any problems with former dating partners and domestic abuse?
Are you asking me that? No, there's a lot going on, and I keep hearing we haven't heard the last of it, so that's the sad part.
I don't know that I've ever read anywhere of any other legislature that's had two legislators who used to date, and now one is accusing the other of abuse and gets a protection from abuse order,
right.
So the other one may not be able to come to work.
Well, it's a sad distinction to make in the state of Pennsylvania that we have that honor of being the only state that has that.
We're a leader, Mara.
It's sad.
We're a leader. But
Very sad.
Something that we haven't been leading in is higher education. And to talk about that subject today, we have Ken Mash with us, the president of the Association of the Pennsylvania State College and University Faculty. Ken, welcome back to the show.
Charlie Moore, it's great to be here again.
Well, we should clarify, we are a leader in higher education. It's the funding that we have an issue with, correct?
It really is, and it creates this kind of weird situation where you have the U.S. News and World Report ranking Pennsylvania 50th
That's what
for
I
higher
was referring
education.
to. Right.
But it's 50th, but it's not because of the quality of higher education in Pennsylvania. It's really just because of the cost, the amount of debt that students are carrying with them when they're done, and access generally that we have so many people who can't afford to go.
So that's a new study. We've ranked 47th in other studies, right. So it's not good.
All right, we're 47th when it comes to per capita funding for public higher education. Look, this is a crisis in Pennsylvania. It truly is. If we're going to look at our future, and we see, we have municipalities bidding to have Amazon come. We want high-tech industries to come to Pennsylvania. They're not going to want to come to Pennsylvania if we're not educating the workforce here. And there are so many benefits that derive to people from a college degree that it's really kind of insane that we've allowed this to happen.
Well, I know we've talked in the past about the decline in funding for higher education in Pennsylvania. It goes back, and we're way behind. I mean, we're not keeping up with inflation. We're not doing anything right.
We're below where we were, adjusted for inflation, below where we were 10 years ago.
Right.
So, there was a big cut in 2011. We've never made up for that cut, let alone added on for inflation. And it's really awful for our universities, particularly out in the western part of the state, in the northern tier, the rural parts of the state, and poorer areas in the state where you've got students out there graduating from high school, and we see that they're below the national average in even filling out FAFSA forms. That is, they don't even try to go to college. And Pennsylvania has, I think Pennsylvania's 40th at this point as far as adults with some degree, either from a community college or from a 4-year school. It's not a good situation.
Well, and then it's compounded, isn't it, Ken, by the fact that when you adjust for inflation, the state system appropriations for higher education are actually at an all-time low. I mean, I want to stress that over and over again. Isn't there an awareness on the Hill of this and the positive effect that higher education has for a state and its economy and jobs?
Well, I think that it's mixed. Of course, there are a lot of people in the Capitol building who agree, who think that there's more money that needs to be given to our universities. But of course, there are people there too who are sort of on the attack against our universities. And even just, I think yesterday, there was a newspaper article that one gubernatorial candidate even suggested closing or privatizing our universities. And that's just would go entirely in the wrong direction.
Well, we have private universities.
We have plenty of private universities, but we need to provide an affordable option for Pennsylvanians. The big losers here are the working class Pennsylvanians And that's really why we're so supportive of the Pennsylvania Promise.
And if they can afford to go at all, with the decrease in funding, the students are paying more. They're coming out with higher amounts of debt going into their first, careers. Living at home still probably. I'm sure mom and dad are not too happy about that, but it's the students themselves are bearing a much greater burden if they want an education.
If you're carrying tens of thousands of dollars of debt as soon as you graduate, then what money do you have left over to buy a house or to buy a car or the other things? The burden that we're putting on this generation is incredible, and it seems to me to be really hypocritical for some people who are out there who are okay with this situation when they benefited from a system where the Commonwealth was picking up 75% of the cost almost of their education, and now the reverse is true. And it may even be worse than that, even at our public universities. Something's got to be done, and that's why, like I said, we're excited to do this and to make the argument for it and to support it, because if nobody brings it up, it'll never happen.
Well, taking into account everything we've been talking about here, APSCUF has been one of the leaders in trying to put together a new initiative called the Pennsylvania Promise to address everything we're talking about. Could you tell us exactly what the Pennsylvania Promise is and how it's going to move forward?
Yeah, so the Keystone Research Center and the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center came up with a series of reports looking at our universities, the costs, like I was mentioning before, the failure of students to fill out FAFSA forms and all the rest. And in their last report that they came out with, they made this recommendation for this Pennsylvania Promise. And simply put, what this would do would pay for students whose family incomes are below $110,000. It would pay for tuition and fees at community college. It would pay for students attending one of our universities for the tuition that's set by the Board of Governors and the average amount of fees at those 14 universities. And for those students who are attending one of the state-related schools like Penn State, Temple, Lincoln, and Pitt, it would give them grants equivalent to what students who attended the state-related schools are getting. And it's expensive. Don't get me wrong, it's expensive. It would be about $1 billion to pay for this, but to get some perspective on that, Pennsylvania would go from being 47th in per capita funding. If this was fully funded, it would go up to something like 35th. So that's how it gives you...
We don't even get to the middle.
It gives you some indication of just how bad it is here in Pennsylvania right now as far as funding for public higher education, and also that this is not a ridiculous proposal.
Is this all that's contained in Senate Bill 1111?
Yeah, it's going to be. It hasn't been introduced yet.
Okay.
But Senator Hughes has been a big advocate of affordable public higher education, is going to be introducing it in the Senate. We have a couple of sponsors also in the House, Chairman Roebuck of the Education Committee and Representative Jordan, who is the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. They're going to be introducing it, but we've seen bipartisan support even for this idea. I mean, poverty is not partisan. So, we have people in our rural communities who, if they're going to make those communities better, or if they're going to have a real opportunity, they need to go to college. And it's, again and again and again, these studies come out showing what a difference a degree makes for someone's life, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of happiness in their life. So something has got to be done. And frankly, we're excited about doing something positive and fighting for this. And we're hoping that the students will speak up, high school students will speak up, parents will speak up and say, hey, something has to be done, and this is heading down the right path.
Well, you say it costs $1 billion. The state has just spent $500 million on a project called Open Skies, which is an attempt to try to let the state police talk to one another. And it has been a massive failure for a number of years. I think during the nickel mine situation, they had to bring in Motorola to set up an old-fashioned communication system so that they could talk to one another reliably and effectively. But if we waste $500 million on a radio system that hasn't worked from the very beginning, certainly $1 billion for something of this magnitude would be understandable.
Put that in your talking points.
I know,
Yeah.
you should. Obviously, like I said, I don't want to run away from the fact that this is an expensive proposition, but nevertheless, we're talking about our future, and we're talking not just about the future of the students who go to these public universities. We're talking about the future of the Commonwealth. Everyone benefits when people are employed, they're paying taxes, they have good jobs. It makes everybody's life better and easier. So, we need to really think about what we're doing, and we certainly have to make sure that everybody has at least an opportunity to achieve the American dream.
Is there, I didn't see this, is there a website people can go for PA Promise?
Yeah, it's www.papromise.org.
.org. Okay, we want to make sure we put that out there for our viewers to get additional information.
Now, when is this going to be acted upon, Ken, on the Hill?
Well, that's up, that remains to be seen. I know it'll be introduced, but I think it's going to require people to be active and to ask their legislators, do you support this? And for people to push to make it happen. Without people pushing to make it happen, it's likely not going to happen.
Right.
But I'm excited about that proposition. We see now people being more active, and I think that this is something worth fighting for.
So this pays for tuition and fees. It does not pay for room and board.
It doesn't pay for room and board, and it doesn't necessarily fully pay even for tuition and fees. So, for example, at Millersville University, where they have a per credit tuition plan, this would cover what the Board of Governors says the tuition would be, but anything that goes above that would still be the responsibility of the student. So what we're looking for here is not, I heard it be called free college, but we're really looking at affordable college for people, a reset back to those days when in Pennsylvania and across the country, if you made the grade, if you could meet the admissions requirements, you had a
could go.
real opportunity to go to college.
Ken Mash, thank you for being with us
Yeah.
today. As always, an incredible discussion here, and you've helped the viewers with providing lots of good information, I believe, for the Commonwealth.